Have you ever seen a police dog refuse to let a pilot board the plane? Not with a bark, not with teeth, but with a single stare that stopped an entire airport. He didn't growl, he didn't move, but something in his silence made even the TSA freeze. And when they finally looked under the captain's seat, everyone ran. This isn't just a story about a police dog. It's about the moment instinct whispered louder than protocol, and someone listened. If you've ever believed that dogs can sense what humans ignore, if stories like this awaken something in you, a sense of wonder, trust, or even unfinished grief, we'd be honored to have you join us. Drop a comment if you've ever seen an animal sense danger before you did, and if these quiet heroes speak to your heart, subscribe. No pressure, just presence. Now, let's return to the morning Titan made the entire terminal hold its breath, because what he saw was never meant to be seen. The cold at Stonebridge Terminal didn't come from the snow. It came from the stillness, from that precise moment when a police dog paused, not out of confusion, but clarity. Elian Rourke tugged his jacket tighter as he walked past Gate 9, the fluorescent lights above flickering like they couldn't make up their minds. At his side, Titan, an obsidian-furred German shepherd, moved with practiced silence, not sniffing, not searching, just feeling. It was supposed to be a routine security rotation. Delays, storm warnings, coffee gone cold in paper cups. But Titan slowed, only slightly. His eyes narrowed, locked, not ahead, but through the crowd. Elian noticed it instantly. They'd been partners for 4 years. Titan didn't waste movements. When he paused, it meant something was out of place. Unsaid. Office. The leash grew taut. Titan, Elian murmured, voice low, not commanding, listening. Titan didn't look at him, didn't blink, didn't bark. But there it was, that forward lean, the breath held in his chest, like his entire body had just recognized a secret the world wasn't ready to hear. And Elian felt it too. He turned, following his partner's line of sight, just as a man in a pilot's uniform stepped into frame. Too perfect, too smooth. Titan didn't move, but his silence screamed, "That man doesn't belong in the sky." Titan moved first, not fast, precise. 1 step, then 2. The leash stretched tight between him and Elian Rourke, like a pulse line drawn across silence. The man in the pilot's uniform didn't flinch, didn't even glance their way. But Titan wasn't looking at him. He was looking through him, like his presence carried a frequency only instinct could hear. Elian's hand shifted subtly to his belt, not for his radio, for the grip on trust. For 4 years, this dog had never flagged without cause. Titan, heel! A test. Titan didn't budge. The hallway buzzed with airport noise, paging announcements, suitcase wheels dragging, the half-tired laughter of travelers too numb to care. But around them, something fractured. Passengers slowed. Some turned. Titan growled. Not a warning, not anger. Something quieter, sharper, like a question that already knew the answer. The pilot paused, finally, turned. "Is there a problem, officer?" His voice was smooth, unbothered, practiced. Elian opened his mouth, then closed it. Titan stepped again, between the man and the gate. An unspoken line was drawn. No bark, no teeth, just refusal. And in that pause, Elian felt it. The shift. This wasn't a false alarm. It was a choice. Titan had made it before the humans even realized there was one to make. Elian didn't blink. Neither did Titan. Across from them, the pilot's mask began to crack, just slightly. His eyes flicked left, then down, then back. That was enough. Titan mirrored the shift, stepping again. Closer now. Not aggressive, intentional. Like drawing a silent circle no one had permission to cross. Elian's voice dropped to a murmur. "Nissa, this is Rourke. Gate 9. We have a lock. Something's not right." Static. Then her voice. Cool, sharp. "You sure?" "I'm not. Titan is." A pause. "Then that's enough." Seconds later, Nissa Thornavale arrived. Composed, quiet. Her badge caught the light like a blade. She didn't need the full story, just one look at Titan's stance. "What's the call?" she asked. Elian didn't hesitate. "We screen him." The pilot scoffed, low, almost amused. "You're delaying an international flight over a stare?" Titan didn't move, but his ears twitched, once, like he registered that voice. Nissa stepped closer. "Name, flight, ID." He handed it over. Calm, professional, but too smooth. Rehearsed. Titan's breath slowed. His body relaxed, not in defeat, but in readiness, the kind that comes right before something breaks. Nissa glanced at Elian. "You trust him this much?" He didn't look away. "I trust him more than the system." The tension spread, quietly, like frost over glass. Passengers began to slow, sensing something unspoken. A mother pulled her child closer. A man paused mid-step, lowering his phone. Not out of fear, but instinct. Nissa's fingers hovered above her radio. Titan hadn't moved, his gaze fixed, his breath now shallow. But there was something different in his stillness. Elian caught it, felt it ripple under the leash. This isn't just a signal, it's a message. He stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. "Captain Dorn, we're requesting a secondary screening. For everyone's safety." The pilot's jaw clenched. "That's not protocol," he snapped. "I've flown for 20 years. "You haven't flown with him," Elian said, nodding toward Titan. A beat of silence. Then the pilot's voice softened. "Too much." "I have a cat," he offered, too casual. "Maybe your dog smells meds on my coat. She's sick. Been a rough night." Nissa didn't blink. Neither did Titan. That's when Elian knew. This wasn't pushback. It was containment. The man was stalling. "Search him," Nissa said. 2 TSA agents flanked the pilot. He didn't resist, but the muscles in his forearm twitched. Not defiance. Recognition. Titan exhaled, just once. A sound like release, like confirmation. Elian scanned the crowd. "You'd walk right past this man?" "So would I, if not for him." The screening room was cold. Not from temperature, from certainty being stripped away. Captain Dorn sat at the metal table, arms folded, calm, too calm. His eyes scanned the corners of the room like they weren't walls, but exits. Elian stood by the door, Titan at his heels, silent, but ready. His body was still, yet every fiber hummed, as if memory itself had scent. TSA officer Syra Fenlon sorted through the pilot's belongings. Wallet, pen, keys, mint tin. Nothing abnormal. That was the problem. Dorn leaned back, smugness creeping into the edges of his voice. "I assume this won't take long." No response. Syra continued her search, but Titan didn't look at the table, didn't flinch at the pilot. His focus was elsewhere, locked on the folded blazer resting over the chair. And then he stood, slow, deliberate, moved toward the blazer. Elian didn't speak. He knew that gait, not inspection, not curiosity, confirmation. Titan raised a paw, placed it gently on the left shoulder of the jacket. The room went still. It wasn't random. It wasn't trained. This was instinct, looping through a memory they didn't even know was his to hold. Elian stepped forward. "No words," he whispered. "Just open it." The room dimmed, not because the lights were off, but because clarity demands focus, and sometimes silence is the most deafening signal of all. Syra adjusted the portable scanner with practiced ease, the blue glow humming as it passed over the blazer Titan had marked. "Nothing visible," she muttered. "Fabric's clean, stitching standard, no tags out of place." But Titan moved again, just one paw sliding lightly along the lapel. Then he stopped, exactly where the seam shifted. There. Elian crouched beside him. His fingers followed the faint line. At first it was nothing, just cloth. But then he felt it. A ridge, too precise to be accidental. "Bring the scanner lower," he said, voice steady. The light passed again. This time it flickered. The screen pulsed. Inside the lapel, embedded beneath the seam, was a shape. Thin, flat, hidden. A pause. Then Syra's voice dropped. "It's not fabric. That's a chip. Flatline signature, custom housing. Alien exhaled, barely. Why hide something that isn't active? Because it's not supposed to be found, Sarah whispered. Titan sat beside the chair. Still, watching. No longer alert, aware. Like he'd already known. All along. And in that stillness, the room changed. Not with panic, but with truth. I want a lawyer. Captain Dorn's voice cracked slightly, just enough to expose the pressure behind the mask. But Elian didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the scanner, a rectangular outline, buried, silent, dangerous. It wasn't just a chip. It was a trigger waiting for the wrong moment to exist. And Titan wasn't moving. Not because he didn't sense the danger, but because he already had. Elian's thoughts spiraled backward. 6 months ago, a case, a child's backpack. Innocent fabric, familiar stitching. But Titan had paused. Paw raised. Same movement, same weight. Back then, it had been a USB drive. Sealed in cotton, encrypted, untouchable. No one believed the dog until it decrypted itself. That memory looped now, louder than the silence in the room. Get Homeland on the line, Nisa said behind him, and ground that aircraft. Dorn didn't flinch, but his shoulders slumped, barely, like a man watching his alibi unravel in real time. Elian crouched beside Titan, placed a hand on his back, not to guide, but to thank. You remembered this before any of us did, he whispered. Titan blinked once, not tired, not triumphant, just aware. And Elian knew. This wasn't luck, it was legacy. The confirmation came 5 minutes later. Too fast, too clean. Homeland Security's voice on the line was calm, but what it carried shattered protocol. Captain Silas Dorn is registered MIA 11 months ago. No flight logs, no reactivation order. Just vanished. Nissa swore under her breath. Pull his credentials from the system, now. But Elian's focus had already shifted. Not to Dorn, to Titan. The dog had turned his head, gaze locked toward the terminal window. His body tensed, breath stilled, a stance Elian knew too well. It wasn't over. He followed Titan's eyes, and that's when he saw it. A figure, moving casually between luggage carts near the tarmac, wearing a headset, a pilot's badge clipped just off center. Not running, not hiding, slipping in. There's another, Elian whispered. He didn't wait. Nissa, pull the evac protocol, clear the aircraft, right now. Alarms hadn't sounded, but something else had. Titan's instincts. And this time, Elian didn't question them. He gripped the leash. TSA, perimeter breach. Possible second operative. People began filing out onto the snow-covered tarmac. Some confused, some annoyed. None aware they were walking away from what could have ended everything. Titan stayed by the window, unmoving, because he wasn't watching what happened. He was watching what was about to. Elian didn't hesitate. Titan, track. No command needed, just trust. The Shepherd launched forward, low and focused, weaving past stunned personnel and security barriers, like he knew the path before his paws even touched it. They reached the edge of the tarmac. The second man, still moving, not rushing, just close enough to seem normal. But Titan knew better. The man glanced over his shoulder once, then broke into a sprint. Stop! Elian shouted. Too late. Titan surged ahead. The takedown was fast, fluid. He hit the suspect clean at the knees, knocking him flat across the icy ground. The man's clipboard flew from his hands, splintering on impact. No papers, just thin, metallic layers hidden in the casing. Elian dropped to one knee beside it, fingers grazing the exposed metal. Still warm. Tech? He asked, breath sharp. Nisa's voice cut through his earpiece. Holden, we just confirmed. The chip from the jacket. That was only half the trigger. His chest froze. Elian turned toward the suspect, pinned beneath Titan. The man's eyes, wide with something between rage and resignation, didn't plead. They dared. This was never about one flight. Titan stood over him, not growling, not moving, just watching, because the dog had already done the math. Titan didn't bark. He didn't need to. He pivoted, away from the suspect now restrained beneath him. and locked onto something else, a fuel cart. Parked near the aircraft's belly, unmanned, seemingly ordinary, but Titan stepped toward it, slow, steady, with purpose. Elian felt the shift in the leash before he saw what Titan had sensed. The dog froze, nose tilted slightly upward. Then, a single huff, short, software, intentional. Elian followed the line of Titan's eyes, and there, barely visible beneath the fuel line valve, a shimmer, something metallic, flat, unmarked. He crouched low, reached slowly, a wafer-thin chip, pressed to the frame with translucent sealant, still warm. "Nisa," he said into the radio, voice lower than breath. "We have a third device. Fuel line, manual proximity, silence. Then, evac the team, clear the area." Titan stood beside Elian, composed, unwavering. And that's when Elian understood. This wasn't a random trail. Titan had been tracking intent, not movement, not scent, possibility. What could happen if no one listened? Elian placed his hand on Titan's shoulder. "You knew, before any scanner did." And in that moment, surrounded by snow, noise, and silence, one truth echoed. Some instincts aren't trained. They're chosen. The bomb unit arrived fast, but not fast enough for the seconds that followed. Because time, when soaked in instinct, stretches. They surrounded the cart, disarmed the chip, logged the device. Procedure followed. Steps taken. But Elian didn't watch the techs. He watched Titan. The shepherd hadn't moved from his stance. Ears tilted, spine straight, breathing slow. He was listening, not for threats, for patterns. "Is there more?" Elian whispered. Titan didn't bark. He turned, not toward the suspect, not toward the aircraft, toward the terminal. Elian followed his gaze. Glass, lights, layers of bodies moving through Gate B, where reboarding had already begun. "Nisa," his voice cracked like static. "Gate 19, isn't that?" She cut in. "Yes, it's Dorn's flight. They're rerouting. It's active again." Elian's heart didn't race. It slammed. He clipped the leash. Titan didn't wait. They ran, past the cart, past the snow, past what had almost happened. Because instinct doesn't check boxes, it breaks them. If they had a backup pilot, then they had a backup plan. And this time, Titan was already halfway there. Terminal B was alive again. Passengers shuffled toward reboarding, clutching boarding passes, cradling coffee cups, blissfully unaware. Elian and Titan slipped through the side corridor. No words, just velocity. Their footsteps echoed like countdowns. Tick. They passed a janitor's cart, unattended. Wrong hallway. Tick. A loudspeaker called Flight 317, rerouted. Gate 19. Tick. Titan stopped. Not at the gate. At a door. Family restroom. Unmarked. Quiet. He didn't growl. He didn't move. But his body tensed, like a wire pulled tight between instinct and inevitability. Elian felt the leash stiffen. He drew closer, just as Nissa's voice cracked through comms. "Intel confirms, second pilot may have bypassed main entry, disguised as crew transfer." That was it. Titan lunged, just as the door handle clicked. The door creaked open, too slowly. A shadow moved inside. Then, a stumble, a glint. Elian reacted fast. He pulled the figure back. Not a weapon, a case. Cold metal, still latched. He dropped to one knee, flipped it open. Not electronics, not wires. A folded uniform, still warm, and taped inside the lining. Another chip. Elian whispered, "This wasn't a backup plan." Titan's ears flicked. It was a reset. The uniform was real. Issued last month. Pilot's badge encoded. Belonged to someone from Boston. Reported missing 2 days ago. Elian stared at the tag, the stitching, the warmth still lingering in the threads. Titan didn't move. He stood near the figure, subdued, silent, calculating. This wasn't coincidence. It was infrastructure. Nisa's voice came through the comm, low, steady, but with an edge that cracked. "We found traces of ammonium perchlorate in the lining. That's composite explosive residue. Undetectable. Elian didn't answer. He couldn't, because he was connecting pieces no one had laid out, and suddenly they fit. Too well. Titan flagged 3 false positives last month, he said softly. Denver, Raleigh, St. Louis, all dismissed. And everyone tied to this. This wasn't phase 1. This was phase 2. He looked down. Titan looked up. Not questioning, just waiting. Like the one creature in the room who had always seen the full map, long before anyone else thought there was one. They weren't testing security, Elian said. They were testing response time. A pause, then, how long it takes us to doubt a dog. Titan blinked, once, and in that single gesture, Elian felt it. This had never been about detection. It had always been about hesitation. The sweep began, not with alarms, but with footfalls, measured, heavy, intentional. Security teams fanned out across Terminal B. Locker rooms, crew halls, service closets. Every shadow became suspect. Every sound decoded. Elian and Titan led the lower wing, past a broken water fountain, past a flickering vending machine, until Titan stopped. Door on the right. Mechanical access, staff only. Titan backed up. Not a bark, not a growl, but a recoil. Elian froze. That signal meant one thing: heat or movement. He gave the silent hand sign. 2 agents flanked. The door opened with a reluctant creak. Inside, cold air, metal grids, insulated walls, and something taped behind an HVAC panel. Not a bomb. A map. Weatherproof. Hand-drawn. Flight schedules. Gate rotations. Red circles. Timers. Crossed-out initials. Titan sat, still, silent, as if saying, "This is what they didn't want you to find." Elian unrolled the map, his fingers trembling. These weren't just airport targets. They were timestamps of hesitation, places where instincts were questioned, where dogs barked and got overruled. He looked at Titan. "You weren't tracking threats, were you?" Titan blinked. "Once. You were tracking doubt." The map was old, not in where, but in intention. Some markings dated back months, long before Titan had paused at that janitor cart in Denver, long before Elian had even joined terminal security, before the false positives were laughed off. This was never about one airport or one flight. It was a blueprint for manipulation, not of systems, but of people. Elian sat on the cold concrete, map stretched across his knees. Nisa knelt beside him, quiet. "I cross-checked the symbols," she whispered. "Half of these match handlers who got pulled. K9 units. Reassigned. Silenced." He looked up. "Why target the dogs?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They both knew. Because dogs don't lie. They don't hesitate. And that made them dangerous. Titan stood still, his eyes not on the paper, but on a wall, a ventilation shaft, narrow, unmarked, forgotten. And in that moment, Elian saw it again. Denver. Trace's bark. The one he ignored. He stood up. Fast. "This whole thing," he touched the map. "It's not just a plan. It's a record of when we stopped listening." Titan turned, not toward the exit, but deeper into the hallway, where the next silence was already waiting. It wasn't the map that broke Elian. It was the name. Tucked in the lower corner, smudged, half erased. Patrice Williams. He froze. A trainer, former handler. Vanished 2 years ago after a classified overseas tour. Official report, medical leave. Unofficially, she disappeared without a trace. Titan shifted beside him. Elian's breath slowed. "Patrice trained you," and suddenly everything fractured. He remembered the day they met. Titan had failed his evaluation, labeled too methodical, too silent, but Patrice had vouched for him. "He doesn't react. He calculates," she had said. "That's rarer than you think." Nisa stepped beside him with a tablet, eyes wide. "We pulled fragments from encrypted logs, military research. There was a pilot program. Behavioral embedding," she added. "They didn't just train the dogs. They conditioned memory. response, loyalty loops. Elian turned to Titan. What if they used her? His voice barely a whisper. What if that pause in Denver wasn't hesitation? Titan met his eyes. Calm, steady, not confused. Remembering. Elian crouched, pressed his palm against Titan's chest. You broke through it, didn't you? Titan leaned in, gently. Because some instincts aren't trained. They fight their way back. The file was encrypted, deep military archive. But Elira cracked it. Fragmented video logs, handler notes, neural test grids, and one flagged clip, no name, no timestamp, just silence. Elian leaned closer. The video played, grainy, a wide training field, two figures, a woman in uniform, a black German shepherd pressing his paw against her chest. Not playful, restraining. In the corner, a blinking device, a sharp tone, then static. Elira's voice was thin. They didn't just condition obedience. They embedded triggers. Elian's heart kicked. It was a test. He turned to Titan, frozen, watching the screen. That wasn't just memory. It was recognition. He'd been there. He knew. All the hesitations, the long pauses, the silent refusals. They weren't confusion. They were defiance. He broke the loop. They tried to use her, Elian whispered, to program him. But Titan had chosen something stronger than command. Conscience. He kneeled beside him again, voice cracked at the edge. You were never their weapon. Titan pressed into his palm, slow and sure. He wasn't reacting to the world anymore. He was rewriting it. Silence held the server room. Not out of fear, but realization. Titan had never been obeying commands. He was filtering them, refusing what didn't feel right. And now Elian saw it, not as instinct, but as choice. The Paws training video glowed faintly on the monitor, looped at the moment Titan refused to move. His paw, her chest, the warning, before anyone else saw the danger. He remembered, Elira whispered, even when we didn't. Elian stood slowly. They weren't just testing how far they could push obedience. He looked at the screen, then at Titan. They were testing what it takes to break trust. Titan sat, calm, steady, a black silhouette against humming servers and flickering lights, and Elian felt it rise in him. Something old, something buried, guilt, and then pride. You didn't forget who you are, he said softly. You rewrote it. Titan blinked, then took a step closer. Not toward the exit, not toward the threat, but toward Elian. A gesture so quiet it rang louder than sirens. Not just loyalty, forgiveness. The calm didn't last. Just as Elian whispered those words, Titan's ears snapped forward. Something shifted. Not in the room. In the rhythm of the system. A power flicker. A hum in the walls. A surge in the data grid. Elira spun to the console. Wait, there's another trigger. Something's active in control level 3. It clicked. Fast. That level controlled pressure locks, fuel line valves, backup circuits, a second detonation path. Elian was already moving. Titan, go! Down the stairwell, through flickering lights. No time for commands, only instinct. Titan led, nose low, body slicing air, past security bulkheads, past places they'd already cleared. Then he stopped. A control panel partially ajar. A man crouched behind it, gloves, headset, smiling. You're too late. Elian didn't hesitate. He lunged, tackled him hard. Titan locked on the wrist, disarming without harm. A panel sparked behind them. It was armed, a secondary line, wired to trigger if tampered with. Elira's voice cracked over comms. Can we disable it? Number, but we can reroute it. Cut the upstream feed. A beat. Elian looked at Titan. You marked that shaft earlier, didn't you? Titan was already turning. That pause, that moment hours ago? It was never hesitation. It was prophecy. They reached the shaft with seconds to spare. Elira's voice echoed in Elian's earpiece. We can reroute from the emergency junction if we act now. Titan didn't wait. He dove into the crawl space, guided not by orders, but by memory. Every twist in the duct matched what he'd once paused at hours ago. No confusion, no guesswork, only instinct. The feed was cut, the circuit severed, clean. The panel outside blinked, then died. And for the first time since the morning began, Terminal B stood still, unharmed, alive. Titan emerged, dusty and trembling, but unshaken. Elian dropped to his knees, arms open. Titan walked into them, not like a soldier, but like someone who'd come back. There were no medals, no headlines, just the quiet sound of breath and the slow return of light through the terminal glass. And maybe that's what heroism really is. Not a bark, not a command, but the decision, again and again, not to walk away. If this story stirred something in you, we'd love to hear it. What would you have done in Elian's shoes? Or in Titan's? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in the quiet power of loyalty, of instinct, of second chances, you're already part of this journey. Subscribe if you'd like to stay close to stories like this. No pressure, just presence, like Titan taught us. Life lessons from this story. Sometimes life doesn't test you with noise. It tests you with silence, with a partner who doesn't speak, but who waits for you to listen, with a moment that doesn't scream danger, but pauses long enough to ask if your heart still remembers what's real. Titan didn't save that terminal because he was trained to. He saved it because he chose to trust what the world had taught him to doubt, his instinct. And Elian? He didn't win because he had all the answers. He won because, finally, he stopped asking why the dog hesitated and started asking what he saw. In a world obsessed with speed, precision, and control, this story reminds us of something quieter: the power of presence, the strength in listening, the beauty of not needing words to know what matters. So maybe the next time someone doesn't speak, a child, a dog, a stranger, you'll pause and ask yourself, are they silent, or are they waiting for me to see what they already know? Because not all protectors bark. Some simply stay until the danger passes and the truth is safe again.